Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another episode of Building Returns, hosted by Radio W.O.R.K.S. My name is John Stokoe, and my business partner and I founded Source My Property, a property development and investment portfolio building firm in the South Wales of the United Kingdom. This radio show, however, is called Building Returns, and it's all about the movers and shakers in the property and real estate industry globally. And my role here pretty much is to showcase those that are doing things differently, doing things better than everybody else. And I really want to showcase their original flavor and let all my viewers around the world listen and hear what they have to share. Tonight, we have the pleasure of showcasing a true global entrepreneur who's gone to the highest highs and the lowest lows on the planet. And he's done this, he's braced many industries. And what he does know in everything that he puts his mind to is success. And tonight we get to know about his flavor in the property industry and what he's doing in the United States of America. So tonight I welcome Robin Booth from South Africa. Good evening, Robin.
John, hi, good evening. Great to be with you.
No problem. Lovely to have you here. Before we get into the thick of it and we start talking property and everything all serious, can you give our listeners a brief background on you, where you've come from, and what's pretty much led up to your property journey, a bit of your life journey as well, and then so we can kick off from the property side of stuff. Tell us about you.
Right, man, John. One always can take it back to, well, where in the story does it begin, right? I mean, sometimes I'm often asked, where did I first become a property investor? Or in this case, it actually is, where did I first become interested in experiences? Because that actually goes back to a young child where I really love doing diverse things and I love being creative and love solving problems. I found that was something that was really innate and part of me. And part of that process actually came out of me saying, well, these are the kinds of things that I'm quite good at. I'm quite good at solving problems. I love showing other people how they can do the things that I can do. And out of that, I decided, well, hang on, I really would like to be a teacher. And I found I was quite good at showing other people how to do things. So out of that, I just didn't want to get into the traditional teaching mode of, well, the government gives me a curriculum and tells me I have to teach children in a certain way. So I thought, well, the best age to do this is actually preschool. So I became a preschool teacher, the first male preschool teacher in South Africa back in the early 1990s. And I am leading up to, how I got into property, because at some point I said, I want to start my own school because whatever is out there, I don't fit in. I just don't want to teach in that way. I'd like to be more creative. I'd like to be empowering. I want to show these kids what's actually really possible for them in their life, not just the curriculum and how to read and write, but actually how they can be the best version of themselves. So I did that. I founded a school in 2004. And this is where the key is that to start the school, I had to have land. I actually needed a big portion of land. And that was where my kind of exploration started into, well, where do I find a big portion of land in Cape Town, which is an international city, which is an expensive real estate city. And I needed to find someplace. And through a long process, found a large portion of land, started a school, and ran the school and had to run the business of that and grow it so we could pay the bonds and the mortgages and the land. And where the penny dropped for me, John, is actually when I decided, hang on, I enjoy the teaching, but I don't enjoy the administration. So I sold my school, but I kept the land. And in that, the new school that I sold it to then paid me rent on this big portion of land. And suddenly the penny dropped. It was like, this is a much better way to create wealth, or actually just even to create income. Instead of me running a school to get money, to pay the bond, to eventually get the property, well, why don't I just lease it out to someone else? They can run the business, and then I can just get the income and pay the bond and then get the property for free, in other words. And that was, for me, the first kind of real insight by kind of just, I don't want to say trial and error, but I landed up there. And then suddenly all my skills in problem solving, experiences, passive income streams, just really started blossoming out of that. And I guess, that was for me the main thing. And then since then, it was, okay, so where else can I invest in property? Because, South Africa has its challenges. And while we're talking, today we have a new president, which is incredible.
Yeah, fantastic. Saw that very, very happy for South Africa. As an ex-South African myself, I think it's a great move forward for the country.
So back in those days, our currency wasn't very good as it is today, because obviously the world seems to be saying this currency is better, or the president's better today, so our currency is a bit stronger. But in that case, it was, well, where do we go offshore? And in that, I started investing offshore, learned some very tough lessons, which we can chat about tonight. Got a breakthrough in how to invest in America using other people's money with no risk to me, other people's time. That was just a major transition. And of course, here locally in South Africa, from student housing, which is the biggest growth factor worldwide in the moment in the real estate, as well as flips, as well as development, which we're doing now, that piece of school land. Well, I'll tell you, it is exponential in its value, not as a school piece of land, but actually as a development in apartment, or as a shopping center, which is what the some developers are asking of us. And in that, then there's this whole blossoming growth of, wow, there's just so much to do here in the real estate, and we're in the prime position to really expand on that. And of course, like you pointed out, problem solving and all those kind of skills that bring us to this point where we're going to obviously have this conversation, that makes us who we are, is our past and the decisions we make. And there's still a teaching that loves sharing. So when you said and invited me to be on this, I'm like, this is going to be a great opportunity, for me just to share my hard lessons and, where I paid the price. And if that just helps someone else, like it helps my coaching clients that I work with, that's just, that's just actually the icing on the cake.
That's exactly what it is, Robin. And this is why I wanted to have you on the show, is there's a lot of people out there that have got similar experiences, but I'm looking for people on the show that have got that are unique, that are doing things differently. It's no use telling the same story, or as some of the viewers know, that we're going to be putting out a book that's going to be based on these shows as well. So if I'm putting out a book that's, or this radio show that's telling people the same old story, it's not going to get the viewership. It's not going to have the impact. And it's not about the marketability of it all. It's all about the message and the information that we can basically pass over to other people so that they can become educated, so they can be empowered to do something that they possibly would not have done before. So it's no use me telling you stuff that you already know. So obviously, hence, thanks for coming on the show. I mean, when I first met you properly in person was a few months ago in LA, and I was enthralled by the conversation we had in the hire car as we drove around LA underneath the Hollywood sign, etc. And you were telling me about I was amazed that here's a guy living in South Africa, and coming from South Africa, we can be quite closed off. But here's a guy doing massive, not just a house here and a house there. You're doing massive, up to multi-million-pound developments in the United States remotely. Now that is unbelievably intriguing, even to someone like myself who's quite big in the property industry, and I really was enthralled. So where are you now? If you can tell us, what is the business model? I know you got the big development, and I know you have the other model of the other people's houses and all the rest of that. Can you differentiate those and describe those to the viewers for me, please? Sure.
So the easiest way is, again, to tell a story of going back to how I originally started going into the States. And there it was as a foreign investor who obviously doesn't have a green card, who is very green in investing in the US. And through a friend of mine here, I managed to at least get to the States. And due to me being a foreign investor, I couldn't get access to local mortgages. I needed to get private money. And the private money came at a high interest rate, 12%, and could only get 60% loan to value. And it was quite a lengthy process to do all the documentation. So your
entry into investment property is an expensive, and also coming from rands as well, is quite an expensive proposition. So what was the solution?
Well, the promise there was for us is that once we're in and we create our LLC companies, the limited liability companies in America, that after a certain period of time, we could build our credit and then apply to the local banks for the mortgages. And that didn't happen. That was either it was a rule or some law that changed that prevented people from doing it. And then I'm stuck with all these properties, which were single residential, 3-bed, 2-bath, really good, solid investment, in America. Just so
where was that?
Okay, so we had properties in Florida, in Orlando, Atlanta, and in Oklahoma. Those were the three ones where we had targeted and were focused in.
And that was family residential properties.
Those ones were there. And then the decision came, well, what am I going to do now? Because I'm kind of stuck with this situation. And out of that, like I mentioned before, I love problem solving, except this took me 4 years to problem solve. I went, again, from this side in South Africa remotely, and I looked to see, well, who could I actually speak to refinance these properties? Because paying 12% with all that cash that we had put down is just not a good investment. I mean, yes, you could argue that we're hedging our currency, but that's not really what we're wanting. I'm an astute investor. I don't want to just say my money is there and I'm just going to leave it and hope that it appreciates over time, with capital. And yes, we did get in.
How do you do it better?
Well, in this case, yes. I mean, I think I'm always driven by that, right? I mean, about my thinking processes, and I'm always looking to see, especially creative financing, how do we make this work? So to cut a very long story short, which is 4 years, right, I was listening actually to a podcast, and he was talking about seller financing. And as I said, I love the seller financing. And he came across this model. He was talking about the subject to, which is the seller of a house is selling the property subject to their mortgage staying in place. But I still get title of the property. I still get full ownership. And he was explaining the pros and cons of it. And there are some challenges that one needs to be aware of. But we've managed to sort that out even as well. So it even makes it an even cleaner, no-brainer process.
Can I just stop you and rewind just a little bit? We've had this discussion. I sort of understand it, but you want to give us the dummy's guide for what you just went through there.
Okay, so the dummy's guide into how you do a subject to deal, was dummy's guide and why I just had to get out of this private money lending situation that I found myself in.
No, the dummy's guide of the subject to, I think that's the crux of it.
Okay, great. So as investors, and maybe I mustn't generalize and say many investors, and you've kind of preempted it, are really looking to use other people's money. I mean, if you listen to Robert Kiyosaki, you listen to a lot of the astute investors out there, they're going to say to you that wealth is created when you're using other people's money and other people's time. And it's easier said than done, right? I mean, it's easier. We all know that. And in this case, we try and use the bank's money, which is other people's money, but that just comes with a whole lot of restrictions. If you also are lucky to find a private money lender, that sometimes is even worse because their restrictions and criteria for lending are actually sometimes worse than the bank. So that wasn't a good option. So then the seller financing option is one where the seller of the house is actually saying that they've got a bond in place at the moment, they've got a mortgage, and they're willing to keep that mortgage in place even though they're selling me the house. And that just changed the whole dynamic because as a foreign investor, it meant that in 5 days, from not even knowing anything about investing in America, we can actually supply an investor with a house that has a bond that's in their name, and they've literally put no money down. And there's no risk, and I'll explain to you why there's no risk. So basically, if you, John, have the property, and let's say you've got an 80% mortgage on your property, you've probably got a good interest rate. So anywhere between 2.75 to maybe 4%, right? Which in America is
12% that you had before.
Exactly. And in South Africa, our current one is 10%, 10.5, and it fluctuates. Suddenly like 2.75. And if you were a first-time American buyer, you got first-time American buyer's rate. So you even got better rates than that. So I'm saying, well, I'd like to buy your property, and you're saying you're willing to keep that bond in place in your name, right? Not in my name, in your name, but I will own the property. I mean, most of us are saying like, hang on, something's not right here. This doesn't sound right. I mean, why would you sell me the property and keep it in your name? Because what happens if it defaults, right? And we'll get to that now. But in this case, so I'm saying, thank you very much. And all it is a signature and you sign it over. There's no conveyancing. There's no major transfer fees. There's no real legal issue except that you're transferring title.
Sure. A question there would be for usually when people are selling their house is twofold. They want the equity out of the property, And also, when they're buying the next property, the affordability based on income for the availability to buy another mortgage. So if they had, let's just say, buying power of $500,000, which is tied up in that property, now they're going to go and buy another one. How does it work then with those two parameters?
Sure. So there's a certain type of seller who is going to see this as a solution, right? Because really, as an ethical, let's call it an ethical investor, we're looking to find solutions that at the end of the deal, we're all going to walk away actually appreciating what the other has done. That the seller is going to say, thank you for helping me, and I'm going to say, thank you for giving me a good deal, right? Those are the two things that we're working towards. It's like a win-win wealth. That's kind of like my hashtag, right? And that's what is driven here. And often on the surface, we kind of think like, well, how does this person actually get anything from this transaction? So you're right, that will be a certain kind of person. It's usually a person who doesn't want to go and buy another property. They want to downscale, or sometimes it's even a holiday home they've got that's being rented, that has a mortgage, and they're wanting to let that go and have no intention of actually finding another place to buy. They aren't that kind of seller. And mostly they would also be distressed. So even though they might have some equity, they're willing to give you a portion of that equity in order for you to solve their problem, which is they need money soon. And in America, these transactions happen so quickly. I mean, 3 days, it's just done.
The speed of execution, it's, I suppose they're buying the time of that. And that's a question. Can you give us some examples of why somebody would be in a situation why they need that immediate exchange or change, or the ability to move somewhere else and do that?
John, there are quite a few around that. Sometimes it's either they're needing that cash, that finance to finance certain surgeries or medical issues that happen in the family. It could be they're just wanting to relocate and they don't have money to relocate, so they're willing to pay for some of that relocation through equity. The situation which actually really sums up quite nicely why a seller would be willing to sell their property subject to them keeping their loan in place is, I think I might have told you that story, is that it's probably about 6 months ago, we bought a property for $100, 100, not 100,000, $100, because the value of the property was $120,000 US. And the mortgage was $120,000 US. So, I mean, you can imagine that if he had to sell it on the open market, firstly, he'd probably have to spend a couple of $1,000s in touching this property up, on making, put some paint on, or making it look a bit better. So he would lose that, right? Secondly, if he has an agent or a broker, that's 5%. He's going to have to fork that out himself. So at the best case scenario, he will just lose $6,000. So when we come and say, listen, we'll take it over as is for $100. Actually, he said he'll take $100 and walk away. Then it's a kind of a win-win. He's saying he's just saved $6,000. He's grateful.
Win-win. So you win.
Yeah.
So you win. The seller wins. And I know we'll talk about how the investors get involved as well. The investor now has investable property asset that they are generating income on for a very low entry amount.
Yeah.
So everybody's a winner. So this is why I wanted to have you on the show, because this is fantastic concept of how you do it. What's the minimum amount that you can go? In the UK, we have a transaction fee of £1. The subject to doesn't quite work here. We have lease options, which is a similar concept, but different. I won't get into that. I'll leave that up to another show. But effectively, to transact an actual, or to do a transaction or a legal transaction, you need a monetary amount of £1 to be exchange hands. And some of the guys, I don't know, literally drive around the streets with £1 coins in their pockets to be able to do these transactions. And this is a message that I wanted to get out to everybody, Robin, is how you can be doing 100, 2, 3, 4, and the size has got nothing to do with it. Massive property deals, 100,000, 2, 3, 400,000 property deals that you are now controlling, that you are now generating income for, let's just face it, negligible amounts, as opposed to if you had to get a buy-to-let mortgage or something like that, you're usually in for at least 20 to 30% of the property's value to be able to get that in a traditional mortgage sense, which is not using somebody else's money. So you're using your money. Sure, and fine, there's a model you might get investors' money, but banks don't really like that. We don't talk about that too much. But now you're entering into a property, you've got an income-generating property, and it's cost you $100. Fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, mostly, my benchmark for properties, certainly here in South Africa, is infinite returns. So it's a property for free, and it's scalable.
Yep.
It's like 10% return, 20% return. It's infinite. That it's not my money, and I'm getting all the return on it, and I can do it again and again and again. And in America,
money from time spent. That's your income, really, is the time that you've put in.
Correct. And even that, if you're a good system creator, you can replicate that and then actually automate that as well to some degree, right? And it's always to some degree. I mean, we can laugh here and joke and say, property is passive income, and I'm going to be the first to put up my hand and say, I don't think that's always true. There's times where it crunches, and you've actually got to go and put the time and energy in, and you get a tenant. Like I was telling you about this great portion of land I've got in South Africa. We've just finished a 2-year legal battle because they defaulted, and it's taken me 2 years to settle that. Even it's just that those are not things that we often all chuckle and say, property investor. You're only a property investor when you've actually had to evict and deal with that. But
when you've been through the 2008 property market crash and got divorced within 2 months of each other, very quickly.
I'm sure. Yeah, but I want to come back to the sub too, John. You cut me short on some of the even cleverer ways to make money and still not have to put your money. You talked about how much money do you have to put down. Now, if the loan to value is a lot lower, so let's say it's 50% or 60%, and then the seller has equity in there, you've got negotiation abilities there. You've got a way to say, listen, your mortgage is half of the market value of the house, but you want to get out quickly. So I'll tell you what, I'll only give you 25% of the equity that you're looking for. And if he wants it, then he goes. And then I'll only have to put down a small portion, and therefore I'm equity positive in the property. But if the other foreign investors out there, let's say like yourself, who you're also wanting to diversify in the US, I can then come back to you and say, John, you know what? I can actually I've got this property for you. It's worth this much. I can actually give it to you with a loan in place, with 50% loan to value in place, and you just give me the 50% equity. And that will also be attractive, especially if it's like at a 6 or 7%, because that's still better than if you right. So out of this transaction, I put a little bit down, but I sold it to you, and you gave that back plus a whole lot more. So in a way, I've actually just done this back-to-back, in a way, transaction that suddenly left me without having to put money down, especially if I do it back-to-back. I don't have to put my money down. I take yours to pay the first, seller his equity, and suddenly now I've made money out of nothing. But this is the part that I really like. So just bear with me, because I know you probably want to ask me another question. So let's say that I have done the subject too with you, John, that I bought this property from you, and let's say that the interest rate was 4%, and we were square on the equity as such, right? So I've got to pay the bank 4%. But I have this friend of mine, maybe in the UK, who he's interested in buying in the US, and he's willing to pay 6%, right? So I can sell him the property. He can pay me a portion of equity, but he's going to now, from today until whenever it terminates, the term ends, he's going to pay me 6%, but I'm only paying 4%. So I'm now getting residual 2% every month. He's happy. I'm sitting there. I've got no risk, no responsibility. I'm not a landlord. I'm the middle bank, but I'm not even the bank, because the bank has the lien on the property, which is still in someone else's name. It's still not in my name. So this whole thing, it's a wraparound mortgage. It just gets so fascinating. And in America, this is quite common. But it just shows you that this whole concept of you can't create wealth without, without putting money down. And I've just showed you one way. Without money, I can get control of a property and then sell it on and still have the control and still get this in between financing. And it's just it's an incredibly creative space.
You're not holding the finance. The bank is still holding the finance.
Correct. And the finance is still in someone else's name. So if everything defaults, right? It's not even my credit. It's on the loan holder's name. Now,
that's a good point. So if you, sorry, I rudely interrupt you. I'm terrible at that. I get so excited about things that pop into my head. So even if you are an investor, we're going into the investor side, which I'll ask. We're talking about now how investors can benefit from this, because there's yourself and then the investor side. But you could also have investors that might, unfortunately, have bad credit for something that might have happened in their past, but they want to get into property invested. Through the traditional methods, the banks are going to shut them down. They have no chance. So now you're opening up another path, another avenue for income generation and capital creation just through the subject to process.
Exactly. I don't have to show my worldly income, which is what I had to do if I wanted to apply, even if it was private money or bank money. I don't have to season funds, which means I have to transfer it to America. It has to sit there in a bank account for 6 months, seasoning to prove that it's not terrorist money, plus a whole lot of documentation. Plus, I have to have 12 months mortgage reserves that are sitting there in the. I mean, how do we become foreign investors? What is this? I don't need any of that. I can have bad credit, even no income, no provable income. I don't have to go to a consulate to get signatures. It's literally a couple of signatures on a trust document to say that, we've transferred this, the property, and I'm the legal holder, and suddenly we're making it work. And it's totally legal, John. And people say, like, oh, come on, this can't be true. Well, one thing, go and Google it firstly, but consider that, in the 2008, 2009 crash in the US, with I can't say all, with so many people having bad credit, how do you think people bought houses? And they had to resort to the subject to model. Sellers had to be the creditors because banks were saying, we're not lending. So, people in America are familiar with the subject to. Here in South Africa, we kind of call it an installment sale or the balloon payment sale, but it's a very different process. It's kind of like you pay the first 4 years, and then on the 4th or the 5th year, it balloons, and you've got to pay the full amount. And this is not that. This is a natural progression of the mortgage. You're assuming the other person's mortgage, but not their risk. So 100%. And, it's actually also interesting, John, is in America, banks also are very reluctant to lend if you've got 5 or more properties. So we've got Americans who are also coming to us to say, please, can we also buy through this model? Because, they're, even though they can prove it, the banks are just saying you're too much risk.
Sure. So you're growing your own portfolios as from an investment point of view. You're growing investors that are coming to your portfolios as well. And you're also providing homes for people that potentially have bad credit for them to live in homes that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to have and benefit from, say, the capital growth, I assume, out the other side, where if you're doing the traditional rental model, you're just paying off somebody else's mortgage, where indirectly although you're paying somebody else's mortgage, it's your property. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes. Well, in this case, obviously, we're renting it out to someone else who obviously wants to be in that house, and they're going to, all that rental income will pay for the remote management, the insurances, a certain kitty for the emergency funds, the rates, all of those things. So that the subject to model, the more money or the less money you put in, obviously the smaller your cash flow is going to be. At the end of the day. But because the returns are so good there, you can actually put very little in, and you're kind of in for the longer haul. Well, as an investor, I'm in there because it's going to be the capital appreciation because my tenant is paying off the loan. But for those people who love flips, that's a great model, because what you're doing is you're saying to
Hello, I think we may have disappeared there. Hopefully we're going to get Robin back.
Profit later on.
There he is. Robin's back again.
There you are, John. I don't know if you heard me, or we lost each other for a bit there.
Just for about 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on, Robin.
But I was just talking about the flips, and in this, it's the same model. You approach someone, and instead of you buying it outright and having to put all that cash down, you basically kind of form a joint venture with the person and saying, we will assume the property now. We will pay the mortgage on your behalf for the next 3 months. And at the end of the 3 months, we'll pay everything up, and we'll, somehow share the profit in some way. but that's a very successful model for flipping if you don't have the money to actually buy the property outright from that seller. Then you can actually do the subject to model as well, and then just flip it, repair, rehab it, flip it, and then you've got profits. That's another model.
Or one that you can build in residual value by doing that way. A question that just popped up from one of the viewers there, Robin, is this model only available in South Africa? No, it's not. As far as I'm aware, it's just in the States. So can you explain that to the viewers?
So subject to is just a contract that says, I'm selling the subject to whatever it is. I mean, so the term in this case is subject to, but we're implying subject to your loan staying in place. And as I mentioned, actually, it's in the States that we're doing this successfully. We can do it, as far as I know, in many different countries. I know we can do it here in South Africa, and I did mention that in here, we're moving it more to an installment sale where, yes, you still have full rights and ownership of the property, and the loan still is in the seller's name, but the regulations are quite different. They have to abide by the National Credit Act, and there's a whole lot of other things. And usually, it's a lot more expensive, but also because the numbers for me just don't work. In South Africa, $100,000 property, I'm going to be lucky if I get $500 rent a month. In the US, for a $100,000 property, I'm getting $1,000 rent minimum. So I'm getting the rent. So I know that even if I had 100% loan to value in the US, I'll probably break even, which here in South Africa, there's no ways. I'm going to have to be gearing or negative cash flow. And that's just not what I want to be in, because there's a limit to that. Whereas in America, I can buy it with very little money down and it's cash flow positive and, or very minimal, but then it's literally just going to sit there and it's going to accumulate. And I can buy then 100 of them and then 5-10 years, recycle that, sell, depends on what your investor strategy is, right? So
Robin, how do people get hold of you? I know myself, I'm obviously very interested. How do people that are watching the show get hold of you?
So, well, they can obviously contact me through our company, which is Worldwide Capital Partners. And, Worldwide Capital Partners is really all around supporting you as the investor, figuring out what is it that you're really wanting to create in your life, because then any model or any route to that wealth that you're wanting to create is then designed according to what your needs are. I'm at the phase where I'm really enjoying that portfolio expansion. And as we travel more, and I mean, last year, we traveled to the States, we traveled to Thailand, we traveled a lot last year. We're now saying we actually want these properties to start paying that off for us instead of, us coming out of income from South Africa. So in that case, they can certainly contact us through this way. And I'll probably say that our drive at this moment, John, is very much more to help investors, find the way that they can manage or own or take control of this process for themselves. I believe that any investor needs to be in full control of what's going on. But that's my personal belief. Right?
Educate them through that process? Do you enlighten and educate and help them through that?
No, that's more of our drive. I'll probably say that, it's not that we're an educational company, because this is what we do. We bring together and show them how it's all done. But that is probably more our drive, is we show investors like yourself the possibility, and then we basically show you how to set it up, how to connect. And then because it will be very difficult for you to actually find the properties, we've got partners in the US in many different states who are looking for them, kind of like a bird dog scenario, who then bring it to us. We crunch the numbers, we show you the numbers, you decide. But at any stage, you're in control of that process. You're in control of the property. You're in contact with the property manager. You don't phone me up and say, hey, Robin, why is my house empty? I can't do that to 150 clients. So you're the boss is how we approach it. So we definitely see how to guide and support so that you can create your wealth. And, it's not us who's benefiting from your wealth creation as such.
Okay. Tell me about Worldwide Partners and who the people that you work with.
So, I mean, that really came out of myself, my wife, there's a family here, and then our partners in America who are on the ground there. So, between him and myself doing the subject twos, we've done over about 400 of these kinds of deals in the last few years. And they are primarily around 400.
That's phenomenal. Yep.
And they range between flips and obviously matching investors with the deals. Sometimes investors through a portion of that company actually just want to say, we just want to park our money. It earns interest at a certain rate, and that's how they want to work it. I'm always interested in how do you create your wealth, as opposed to just how do you park your money and it just earns an interest. And in that case, my partner in America is, he's a broker, licensed broker. He's got franchises in a whole lot of different states, and he's a mechanic profile as well. And he's just this great, a great wealth of knowledge of. I mean, we love solving the problem of how do we buy property for free? How do we maximize our portfolios? And those are the questions that we're driven by, and that's certainly where we see it going.
No, that's brilliant. And that's pretty much what the show is all about, Robin, is how do we get into property? How do we get into income generating investments without any money? And you've clearly shown us a phenomenal way to do that, and remotely as well, through the support through the business. Now, that business setup that you have, something that's quite important to us and something to get people coming to you is your uniqueness, your USP. What is your USP? What makes Worldwide Capital Partners unique?
So there are two answers to that, John. And I think for me, the first one is, I see myself primarily as an investor. So when you come to me because you're looking for an investment, I see we're on the same team. I want to see how I can help you learn what I've gone through so that you can access the wealth that you're wanting, which is a different drive than a corporate identity, which is I want to grow my business to be the best out there and to, bring in a lot of money. And, I was speaking to a client here in South Africa who also has a lot of properties worldwide, actually in the UK, and he's now interested in looking at the US. And he says to me, Robin, so how do you make your fees out of these transactions by helping other investors? And I said, well, what we do is we take it upon ourselves that we're going to be such good negotiators with these sellers that we're going to get our fees out of the equity portion, so that when you buy as an investor, you're actually never out of equity. In other words, you never pay more for the property, which is unheard of even in local transactions. Because usually you buy a property and then you still
transaction fee model.
Yeah. So it's a bit like that, right? And he says, well, and I said, he says, well, what's in that for you? And I said, we both know, and I looked him kind of square in the eye, and I said, we both know that you're never going to get wealthy out of commissions, right? It's just, that's not how you create wealth. You create wealth by leveraging the debt and by, really maximizing that. And I kind of see Worldwide Capital Partners, for me, is a way in which I'm helping fellow investors really create their wealth. And, the thing is, if they don't want the property, I'm going to take it for myself. Because it's a no-brainer deal. So I'm going to keep expanding my portfolio. I'm on my track of my wealth creation. I'm not that kind of person out there who wants the biggest boat and the biggest hotel. You and I can chuckle. We haven't even talked about that, about how I live in my house for free here in Cape Town, because that's also creative financing, and how we deal with all of that. And that's I want my money for my experiences, and I think the Capital Partners is so driven to empowering other investors that is definitely our uniqueness. And of course that we actually can support you in setting, and anyone worldwide, in actually setting up a company and getting their first property like within 5 days from the phone call. I mean, that's just crazy.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. No, Robin, that concept, and I'm just looking at the time now. I could talk to you about this for hours and hours and hours, and I know I will. But we suffer with the constraints of time. We'll extend it a little bit tonight because this is so very interesting. But just very briefly, I know you're dealing with a massive development at the moment, which has been long negotiated. Can you give us a brief? Sorry about the time. A brief excerpt about what that is all about and how that came across.
Okay, so I'm assuming the one that we're really focused on at the moment and driving is this, this large portion of land, which is very strategic for kind of like the low income housing. And it's just such a big need in this country specifically at the moment. And we've been approached and saying, well, how can we actually maximize this land? And we're looking at either building apartments, 3 stories, or what could really be interesting is a shopping center, and linking that back to the community, to police stations, magistrate offices, and a whole lot of other things. So there's a very strong drive to bring in the community, because if you want any kind of change, you have to bring community in. And actual real exciting thing is it's in such a position that we've got the strategic hold that if we get those rights, then suddenly all the properties around us will follow suit, and we will drive that. So we're one thing, and then it will take another 5 to 10 years to just roll that out across. And that's very exciting.
How many homes are we talking about?
Well, just on that one portion that we're talking about, there are probably over 250 there, but that's just probably on a 1/20th of the size that we see has been allocated for this kind of development. And
do you control that?
Well, we control the primary one, and then what we're going to do is speak to all those different neighbors and roll it out as we go along, because it can't happen without us as the primary developer, because we hold the key. Our position of our land allows for the entry into that whole portion. Without that, they'll never get developmental rights because it's off main roads, whereas we have the side road access, and that's the basic key. So once that happens, then it rolls over, and that's the one that we're strategically planning, not just sorting this one out, but looking at the big picture, and of course having everyone on board for that.
That's awesome, and that's again, I keep on saying this, keep on repeating myself, but why I wanted to get you on here is that you're not just a one-trick pony. You're not just looking after a $100,000 house. You are the full spectrum of investment knowledge within the States, within the US housing market. And, you come with that full repertoire of knowing everything from the 200 to even 250 larger homes to a community, right on down to those individual subject to deals, and supplying and servicing and looking after, other investors. And something we've been touching on, and I'll get into a little bit deeper as we get through it now, is, and this is why I identify so strongly with you, is it's not always just about the money. It's about what we can do. It's about the help that we're providing for others. It's about the education that we're giving to others so that they can become independently, financially free, wealthy, whatever it is that they want to do. So we are facilitators in that education. And I think that almost takes you full circle right back to the beginning, where you were an educator, children's education, all the rest. And that's, to me, one of the most gratifying elements of what I do is, selling some of these deals and all the rest. Yes, it's great and it pays the bills, et cetera, but the gratification comes in actually seeing somebody else make a change, making a difference in somebody else's life, whether that be financially, or if we're coming back into, you're talking about changing communities and stuff like that. And that really is commendable, Robin. It really is. It's fantastic to see. And again, like I say, that's why I had to get you on the show. Now, moving swiftly on, just got a couple of other subjects I'd like to just tap on, just so people can get a broader view on you and who you are and what it means to you. Branding, that old question, branding, and its importance. How do you see it as important, and what do you do to encapsulate your specific brand so it benefits you and your business?
So, that's a really good question, because I think you're going to get as many different answers as there are people, even though people will often say, yes, branding is very important. And for me, it's a hard lesson that I learned later on in my life, is that people won't just do business with me because I'm clever and smart. They also will do business with me if they feel that I have influence and have a network. And that I've realized is actually really important. So I've also strategically positioned myself to build that brand of trust, of credibility. The fact that I was a founding school principal is a brand in some way as well.
Sure.
Online trainer, but specifically more now is also making sure that the public out there, or the people out there, can see that I have a public face which is also accountable. Right? Because when you're public, when you've got a public figure, people are going to notice you. And then if you don't do something that's in line with the ethics, they're going to call you on it, because now the social proofing, social media is very transparent. So you really got to be on your game. And I think especially when you're dealing with other people's money and you're dealing with other people's futures, and they're trusting in you for the education you're giving them, I think branding is really important, that you're going to say, I'm backing my name, these people are backing my name, and here I am publicly. And if you don't like what I'm doing, well, there's so many channels now for you to actually, call me on it. So I think that in my world, really important about branding, and how I go about it, is really strategic. I post on Facebook, I put my name out there, we're doing this, and my drive, my motivation around it will nearly always come from an educational perspective. So it's never really about the bragging side of it. It's always around, how can I help you create what you're wanting in your life, in your wealth, for your family, for your kids, for your legacy, for your retirement, for your experiences in life? Because that's actually what drives me. I love traveling. I love experiencing, and as you said, I love actually sharing with people, so that when their eyes light up and they say like, oh my word, I didn't know that I could do that, and suddenly their life has changed. And that's
life's balance is a massive one, and you're obviously manically busy. You've got the children's education, you've got the property business, Worldwide Capital Partners, and you travel extensively as well. I'll just throw a couple up there that some of the viewers, well, most of the viewers might not know, and they do know you. You've traveled to, you've climbed a few mountains, some quite big ones, and you've also been to I call it the lowest low. You've been down to the Antarctic, and there's something else that I picked up about you the other day, was your yoga specialization as well. So about those three things. So we've got business. And I haven't even asked you about your family yet. I don't know, do you ever see your wife? So how do you balance, the whole work-life balance? How do you keep that up and at the same time achieve these phenomenal things that you're doing that people are going to look at you and go, wow, that's just amazing? Because, I'll leave it up to you to say about what mountain it was that you climbed, and then how you very cleverly and strategically balance that from an educational perspective. About it's not about you climbing mountains, it's about the process and what's going through and how other people can learn from that and develop themselves. How do you balance that all up?
So that's a really good question, and you kind of put me on the spot there, because when you say like I'm hectically busy, well, yes, but I'm so determined and committed to creating a life that's not like that. That I've really been focused on the kind of passive income streams, multiple income streams, and automating all these kind of processes, so that actually when I do go traveling, like you mentioned, to the Antarctic, on a tall ship, on a 3-masted sailing ship, or when I go climbing the Himalayas, going through Everest Base Camp and up to Island Peak, that even while I'm doing that, I'm still earning my money. And that, I think, is really where the trick is. And it's not necessarily everyone's cup of tea, but it certainly is mine. So in every business decision I make, I answer 3 questions. Is this non-location based? In other words, can I run it from anywhere in the world? Is this automatable? In other words, can I automate this such that I actually don't have to put all that time and effort in? And number 3, is it scalable? Can I do this once or 10 times or 50 times and it doesn't impact me? And all the things that I do now fit those 3 criteria. And in that way, I can actually keep freeing my time up because I'm putting in place all those systems. And, as I said, it's not everyone's cup of tea. It's what I love doing, because my focus is on creating that ease and that flow in my life, where I do spend time with my family, where we do go on holiday, for weeks or months at a time. And even then, we're still earning income. So I do see my family a lot. And, I love the sports. I CrossFit with my wife. My daughter's a Western Province a netball player. And, we want to do those things which are meaningful for us. And I think, when you know your why, then your why aligns with what you do. And like I said, I want a lifestyle. So everything that I do is molded around that. And I think that would be the question. Well, my answer to you.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic answer, because I, again, subscribe to that. I don't believe that people want to be doing that daily commute every single day. I don't believe that every person enjoys exactly what they do. I know you do, but you're one of the exceptions. You're not the rule. So the ability to get into the business, and this is also what motivates me and what I'm trying to do what I am doing by both, well, a few of the businesses that I have, it comes down to that education and ability to help people create that passive income so that they can actually live the life that they want to live and live the life by their own rules. So they can go climb the Himalayas and have an income stream instead of having to save and save and save for them. And this is the key thing. I've discussed that with Marina, who's hosting the show now. And I believe that we are almost slaves to the financial system that keeps us encapsulated in mortgage and all the rest of that. And we keep on going back to our job every single month because we have to. We don't have any other choice. We don't know any other way. And this is where you and I are great in that we want to educate. We want to show people there is another answer. There is another way that you can release yourself from the shackles of that financial burden and you can live the life of your choosing, not somebody else's choosing or some other system. You can free yourself by doing property through these sort of methods. A lot of people think, oh, I want to become financially free. I don't have the money to get into property. It's utter nonsense. We've proven it once again how you can get in multiple properties, multiple income streams that'll release you so that you can continue. I'm hoping you're still there. I think you've just disappeared. All right, viewers, we just have to hang on for a bit. I'm sure he'll be back shortly. We won't be too long, but I'll just summarize what the show is all about, and it's a story that keeps on echoing, and something that I want to bring up, and I keep on bringing up in every single episode is, what are we doing? Why are we doing the job that we're doing? If you love the job that you're doing and you want to continue doing the job you're doing, I commend you for that, and you carry on. But if you're not happy doing what you're doing and you want to live the life you deserve or you feel you want to live, then there are alternatives out there. And those alternatives are not cumbersome. They're not massively financially cumbersome. There are ways to be able to do it. All you need to do is get hold of the likes of myself, get hold of the likes of Robin, and find out what they're doing to be able to get access to these income generating properties. And it won't be long. You get a few, 3, 4, 5, whatever your income needs are, £1,000, $1,000 income generating properties, and you can live free. You can pay your bills unless you have sensationally massive bills. You could eventually get there, but these are options to release you. And once you've done that, you can then focus on doing. Robin, I'm just sort of covering back. Welcome back again. I know you disappeared there. I'm just sort of encapsulating everything that we've been talking about, just so the viewers don't get bored and have to look at my ugly mug for 5 minutes. So I'm just talking about that. There are alternatives out there. If you're bored in your job, come and speak to the likes of me. Speak to you. Find out how we can do it. Find out how you can create that passive income so that you can go and climb Everest, so you can go on a tall shift, so you can go scuba diving in where were you in the Philippines?
No, Thailand.
Yeah, go. Knowing that come the end of the month, on the first of the month, oh, guess what? My mortgage has been paid for. In your case, not, because you're living there for free. So it's very clever. So, and this is what the show is all about. It's giving people the opportunity to understand that there is something available, that we do have that option. And the likes of us are educators, and we will joyfully educate you. We thrive on educating you how you can actually do it. And I talk about, my analogy is the old Christmas presents or birthday presents. I'm not bothered opening a Christmas present. I get more joy out of watching my kids or somebody else opening a present. And that to me is what it is. It's that giving nature. And I believe inherently every human being does have that. And they want to be able to be the good. They want to be able to do the good and provide and pay it forward and give other people the opportunity to live the life that they want. So I'll get there. I'm going to get to the gratitude shortly, but we're rapidly running out of time. 3 to 5 years time, Robin, where are you in 3 to 5 years time? The big HR question, where are you?
Sure, man. So I have realized that some of those plans keep changing, but I still think it's good to have two parallel plans. The one is what you would say is the current 3 to 5 year plan, and the other one is just a full understanding that that's going to change at any single moment in time. So my 3 to 5 year plan, I probably would say, is we're still expanding property portfolios, but we're actually multiplying the income generating portfolios. And we haven't even actually touched on that, John. The subject 2 deals are kind of like more long-term capital appreciation. We haven't even touched on how do you get cash flowing properties without using your own money, that generates cash every month, not just cash to pay the bonds, but how it actually gives you cash and lots of it every month. We haven't even discussed that yet,
Yep.
And we have both of those strategies, and then we have the middle strategy and all of those. And for us, it's actually really expanding all of that. This last year, we've been testing a whole lot of different models, from student housing to Airbnb, short-term rentals, to, as I say, education facilities. And we found out which ones are really strong, and actually it's all of them. So we're very happy about that. And we've really figured out what it is and what it takes to replicate and multiply that. So we're now in the phase of actually saying, well, wow, this actually works, and we can generate this income without it even being our property, without even having to put money down. Then we want to do that. So this year for us is, expanding 4 to 5 in each of those different models, and then just keep it going, right? So yeah, I just see it's going to be more time, not busier, more time for us, more traveling or more experiences, or just doing what we're really wanting to do. I mean, that's ultimately what I say, what drives me. I want lifestyle and experience, as opposed to a plaque on the wall that says, Robin did well in life. He earned, X million, and nice, but I'd rather, have nothing, but, absolutely lie on my deathbed incredibly fulfilled.
Sure. Robin, this is a part of the show where I get you to speak to the listeners, ask them for what you might want, or tell them something. Your viewers are listening. Is there anything that you want from them? Are you looking for investors, or what do you want to tell them? Up to you.
Sure, man. I guess you put me on the spot there. I mean, what do I want to ask them? Not really. As much that I specifically want to ask them is, I'm the kind of person that come and ask me the question, and I'll help you solve the challenge that you've got, right? And I think it really is around that if there's something that you feel that I can help you with, then that's what I'm really good at, and what I'm very willing to see how I can support. And I think that is really it.
Okay. Gratitude, the last little section. We've been talking about that your mantra, part of your ethics and all the rest, and your lying on your deathbed, the satisfaction, the joy is going to come from what we've done for others. It's a big part of what I'm doing, and the education and the assisting and helping other people achieve and live their dream. But let's talk about gratitude, or maybe not just gratitude, but what are you doing that's ethically right or morally correct, or for fellow man and environment? How are you paying that forward?
So
I think you disappeared again.
Oh, I'm still here, John.
Okay. All right, viewers, we'll just wait for Robin to come back again. You won't take too long, but this is again something that's very important to myself and to the show, is what are we doing from a property perspective as property professionals? What are we doing that is benefiting mankind? Last week we were speaking about an eco-city. I've had people that power their developments from solar energy. I've had Nicholas, who spends a lot of time with the homeless in Chicago. So everybody that I've brought on the show has an element of paying it forward, is doing something that's right, is making a difference in somebody else's life. So there he is. He's back again, back for the grand finale, and he's going to tell us everything about what he does for his fellow man. That's right. Carry on, Robin.
Great, man. So we're actually just talking about, sharing education and knowledge with fellow investors. So that's on the one side, but I'm going to take this back to, the education side of my drive to, when I wanted to be a preschool teacher and really give people the opportunity of what's great for them. As a teacher, if I could impact this child's life, it made a massive difference. So, we haven't chatted about the other passive income stream, which is, I have 7 parenting courses that are online, automated. over 12,000 students, parents, in over 150 countries. They're translated into a couple of different languages. And, that's one way in which I feel I can continue supporting parents in helping their children be the best that they can be. And we chatted before we started on the show, last year when I went to climb in the Himalayas and we climbed some of those tall peaks, we donated a course for every meter above sea level that we climbed, because I live here in Cape Town on the sea level, on the beach. So every meter was a course, and we actually donated over $500,000 worth of courses and material around the world to parents and teachers, because we're helping parents, one, just survive. We know that, because it's just sometimes parenting is really challenging. But for me, it's around giving these youngsters the possibility of a life, of an empowered life, of a life of choice, of creation, as opposed to just dogma. And that for me is what's so important. Is as a coach today, empowering my investors, empowering my clients in their business, all those things. This is the same thing. It doesn't start when you're 35. It starts when you're 3, 4, 5. And that's where I'm targeting. And that's a kind of like, and that's just so scalable. And when I get the feedback from parents, every day, often when they're saying, Robin, this is what I've done with your course, and this is what it's made a difference to me and my child, it's like you're saying, I get that gratitude from them, and it just it fulfills me and allows me to carry on doing what I do with open heart and with a lot of gratitude that I can do that I can share that.
Robin, you are a phenomenal human being. Really honored to have you on the show, to have had you on the show. In brief summary to all the viewers, I carefully selected Robin to come on the show because he is all things to all men. He gives with his heart. He makes sure, and he's empowering thousands of children around the world. He's an uber successful global entrepreneur and businessman that builds returns through property. He encapsulates the vision of being able to do that for others and for himself through no money down possibilities and creating wealth. And at the same time, it's not a greedy prospect. He is helping other people. He's helping himself, sure. Obviously, it would be silly if we didn't. He's helping investors, but he's also helping the current homeowners out of sticky situations. So it's not the big property Uber guru that's greedy. He's doing it for the right reasons, and making a difference, making changes in people's lives. It's a business that makes a difference, and it encapsulates how we do that with no money down. He's climbed Everest, the peaks next to Everest. He's been down south to Antarctic on the 3 shifts. He's raised more than $500,000 for charities around the world. He really is the whole package. Robin, thank you very much for being on the show. It really has been enlightening. Thank you very much, and I will be catching up with you in the future. And I think